about being wary of what you say and how you say it. Apologies. We have an apology from Mark Brown and any others? No? Somebody move that apology be accepted, please. Second. No. Can you hear me? Right.
Yes, Mr. Chairperson, we've got Councillor Nikki moved and Councillor Wendy seconded.
Right. All in favour? Against?
Okay.
Carried, thank you. Obviously, we can't have a public forum. Conflicts of interest? No conflicts of interest. Item 4 is current register of interests. Any comments on that? No?
Councillor Wendy.
Thank you. Confirmation of minutes.
When Councillor Wendy had a question on the register.
Oh, sorry, we missed that.
Councillor, you're on mute.
Unmute.
Right, I'm unmuted. I'm not a partner of the Oxford Fete anymore. Oxford Garden Fete.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Thank you. Confirmation of minutes of the Oxford-Ohoka Community Board, 2nd of February 2022. Somebody move that they're a true record, please. I'm missing anybody waving their hand.
Thomas is moving and Nikki is seconding.
Right. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Matters arising. This is a lot more difficult than an in-person meeting, as we all know. Right, no matters. Wendy.
Councillor Wendy, you're on mute.
Unmute, right. Oh, says I'm still muted. Is that right?
No, you're right.
Oh, good. Thomas, just a question, please, about the e-charger installation in Pearson Park. So it's 2 car parks, but one is just to be used for everybody, someone else on a Sunday. Is that correct? Am I reading that correctly?
My understanding is that there are 3 car parks to be available. 2 already there for the.
Oh, it does say 3 parts. Yes, for sold.
And the 3rd one is for the fast rapid charger.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Shirley.
Just give Shirley a second. Shirley, on mute.
We can't hear you, Shirley. Unmute.
Shirley, unfortunately, is having problems with her computer. She's trying her best.
Could she put her question in chat, perhaps, if she's not getting any joy?
Shirley? There's a screen down there that says chat. Do you want to type in your question?
She said it's fine. We can continue, Mr. Chairperson.
Okay. Ray, you got your hand up? No? Yes, Sarah.
I'm not sure if this is where I would bring this up, but I just had a concern about the current groundwater levels around the district at the moment. Clearly the water tables are very high. Is there any work being done, or can we find out if there's any potential work being done in with ECAN about what the potential of flooding and stuff is going to be over the winter time due to how we're going to be stepping into winter with an already high water table?
I will follow that up, Mr. Chairperson. You can.
Cool. And just one other was, could we also please be kept up to date on the timeline of progression for the new Ohoka subdivision proposal that's being put to the put in for the development, just so that we're aware of when things are going to be read and go to the next steps and sort of what's happening along the way.
Yes, Mr. Chairperson, and through you, it's my understanding that the board will be kept updated with that whole process.
So do we know where it is right now? Is it literally just a piece, an application sitting on a desk, or is it?
I'm sure Tracy will be able to tell us.
Hi, yes, no, it's more than sitting on a desk, so it's going through all the preliminary work with the applicant and planning and all the teams involved in that. So there's an initial assessment process that gets undertaken, and that informs a report that goes to council in terms of the options around how to treat the plan change. So the length of time of that really depends on how fast they get information to us. So it's still in that very, very initial step. And I think I'm happy to circulate the link to the Good Planning website, which sets out really nicely all the steps that the plan change follows, and then we can certainly keep you updated with where that goes to. But I'll send through that link. But yep, absolutely aware that you would like to and should be kept updated where we're at in terms of that process. So yep.
I can assure you that there will be a very large number of people opposed to it. Right, moving on to Deputation's presentations. We haven't got any. What was that?
I think Thomas had his hand up.
Sorry?
Yeah, I did. Thanks. I was just wondering if we could have an update on the two resource consents we discussed at the last meeting, the church in Horrival and the landfill proposed behind Oxford. It might be more appropriate to discuss them in the workshop afterwards, but
I did actually, I sent an email out following our last meeting to the board to update you. So there hasn't been any change since that update, but I'll certainly let you know if anything does change.
thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Right. When do we want to fit Chris in?
Can we do it now, Mr. Chairperson, under deputation?
Yep. Chris, you're in charge.
Thank you very much. So thank you for allowing me to come along and provide some information to the board. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Chris Brown. I'm the Manager of Community and Recreation for Waimakariri District Council. I know most of the board members here. I've had interactions with them in the past. And also hello to all of the other listeners that are out there who may be interested in some of the information that I've got for you. So I'll provide a bit of information around the stockpile of dirt which is at Mandeville at the moment, and then I'll be happy to take some questions from members of the board. So on the 20th of January, we received information that there was some soil that had been dumped on North Eyre Road. And we went and quickly had a look at it, and then decided that it would be prudent for us to put a fence around it and some shade cloth on that fence, due to the fact that we weren't able to determine exactly what was in the soil, and that from a visual inspection on site, it looked as though there was more than just soil there. We could see plastic and other things which are in it as well. Following putting the fence around the outside of it, we contacted Tonkin and Taylor, who are experts in contamination testing. They went and undertook an assessment of the site. The process that they went through was to take 10 soil samples and 4 samples of material that they could actually take out. The samples came back with the 10 soil samples not having any asbestos in them, but 2 of the solid samples that they took out were containing asbestos material. The asbestos material that they found, I'll read a little bit from the Tonkin and Taylor report. TNT collected 10 soil samples from across the surface of the stockpile and submitted them for analysis for asbestos in soils, heavy metals, and hydrocarbons to provide an initial indication of potential soil contamination. Fragments of flat cement sheet and curved cement bound fibrous material suspected to be ACM were observed on the surface of the stockpiles. 4 samples were suspected and submitted for laboratory analysis. And 2 of those 4 samples came back with asbestos inside them. Sorry, I'm flicking between a number of screens here. So when we found out that information, we contacted the Mandeville Sports Club to start conversations with them around how we would go about ensuring that it was safe. The contamination expert Tonkin and Taylor in their assessment provided some recommendations around what we should do to ensure that public safety was looked after, and that was our main focus. So the recommendations in the report identify that a fence needed to be put around it, and we'd already done that. We took a worst case scenario at the start and had already put that fence with shade cloth. It also suggested that while not necessary, we could look at putting a polymer layer on the outside of it to contain it absolutely. So we have gone and done that as well, and you'll see a green substance which is on the outside, but it's basically a glue and just make sure that everything stays there. The important thing to note in those samples that were taken is that there were no asbestos found within the 10 soil samples, and the asbestos which was found was contained within in the bound substance, and that means that there's very little risk of airborne asbestos from the surface of that. And obviously now we've put that polymer layer on, that risk is basically removed. We're confident that public safety is looked after in terms of the material staying there where it is in the state with those actions that we've taken. Our next steps are to start to work with Mandeville Sports Club on and Tonkin and Taylor on what we can actually do to get rid of the soil. We don't want it on site, we want it removed, but we have to, there's a consenting process to go through, and there's also a contamination disposal management plan that we actually need to create as well. So that will involve Tonkin and Taylor doing further testing over and above the 14 samples that they've done at the moment to determine the extent right throughout the stockpile, which is approximately 2,000 square metres. They'll come up with that disposal management plan, and then we'll review that, and we can talk to the community more around what that actually entails and what steps will be taken through that process to make sure that the community are both informed and kept safe as well. So that's an overview. I'm happy to take any questions from any of the board members. Thomas, I can see your hand up, Thomas.
Yeah, okay, I'll kick it off. I've got a few questions, but I'll start off with this. Why did it take over a month to let the board know that this was going on? I had phone calls the week before. Well, we were notified on I think it was Friday last week, but I had phone calls earlier in the week saying, "Have you seen the dirt that's been dumped at Mandeville Sports Club?" And I had a wee cruise round. I couldn't find it, and I thought nothing else of it. So it's very disappointing that it's taken over a month for this information to get to us. Is there any reason why that was?
Yeah, so there's a couple of reasons. The first reason is we found out on the 20th, but as of the 20th, we didn't actually know whether there was anything of any concern within the stockpile itself. We got the contamination report back on the 11th. And then once we received that, we had to have a conversation with Mandeville Sports Club. Remember, the site is leased by the Mandeville Sports Club. The council wasn't aware that the soil was going to be placed there in the first instance. So we had to have a conversation with the Mandeville Sports Club about what actions they were taking, and whether that involved their insurance company or whether that involved any legal action that they might take. So we had to give them the opportunity to have a discussion with them before we went out to the community board and the councillors and the rest of the community. So once we were in a position to be able to do that, we let the community board know and the councillors know. I believe it was 45 minutes to an hour before we actually put the press release out to the wider community to let them know as well. So we had to go through those things before we were in a position to be able to let other people know. We would have liked to have done it earlier at the earliest possible point, but we didn't want to let people know before we had the contamination results, and also we didn't want to jeopardise any future actions which Mandeville or the council might want to go down. So those are the reasons.
Just it makes it very difficult when I'm working and I get calls from people saying, "Have you seen what's on the council's Facebook page?" And not even having a chance to have read the email, which was exactly the same as the press release that was sent out, and having people ring up and asking if I know about it, and then saying, "Well, it happened a month ago. Surely the community board was made aware of it before this," and me having to say basically I know as much as, or less than you do, because I haven't even seen it on Facebook. So it puts us, or will put me in a very difficult position. It sort of makes people question the value of the community board when we aren't even given a heads up, really.
So look, in response to that, we didn't want to let the community board know and then wait to let the community know. The community had already obviously seen the dirt and they were waiting for information to come out from the council. When we were in a position to be able to release that information, we gave it to the community board and then gave it to the community with only a small gap in the middle. The last thing we wanted to do is give it to the community board and then wait a couple of days for them to digest it before going to the community. We didn't see the value in doing that and wanted it to get to the wider community as soon as possible once we were able to do that. So in different circumstances, we would absolutely want to let the community board know sooner, so that they had time to digest it and to seek questions from the community and work with the community as well. It just wasn't possible in this instance. I'm sorry.
Okay, so secondly, does the council have any idea of why this was dumped there and who it was dumped by, and what avenues are there for the council to sort of seek reimbursement for the costs of removing this stuff, because it's going to be very expensive?
So some good questions there. We do know why the soil was placed on site. You'll be aware that the Mandeville Sports Club's been working towards the completion of their concept plan for about 8 years now, and part of that is the development of a walking and cycling track around the outside of Mandeville Domain. A lot of that's already created, but probably about 4, 5, 6 years ago, I'm sorry if I'm wrong on those dates, but the trees at the North Ear Road were removed, and that created some really uneven ground in between the trees where the stumps are. And so the idea was to get the soil and place that in the middle so that they could level that out and actually create that cycle and walking track. So the intentions were very good from Mandeville Sports Club and wanting to get that soil in. Look, where it comes from at the moment, that's not something which we've been focused on. We've been focusing primarily on ensuring that the public safety is looked after. So that's been our main concern in terms of putting that polymer on and putting the fence and the shade cloth around it. What avenues are being looked at? I can assure you that there are avenues that are being looked at by Mandeville Sports Club at the moment. I won't go into the details of what they are, but I can say that they are investigating what possibilities they have and what avenues they can take to look to have it removed, and then look at the financials around that as well. You're right. That there will be a cost involved in moving it. We don't know what that is. We still have to undertake the disposal management plan.
Okay, and lastly, I'm assuming it's like an acrylic type polymer that's been sprayed on it to seal it. Is there a plan for maintaining that going forward? Because it won't last forever. It must only last for like a month to 2 months maximum, I would have thought. So is there a plan to keep that monitored and up to date? And out of curiosity, has ECAN been notified?
Yeah, Environment Canterbury aware, and yes, we will be the ones who will be making sure, with the help of Tonkin and Taylor are going to be the consultants. They're the experts in this field, and we'll be relying on them to tell us how the polymer layer is performing. And of course, that'll depend on weather and rain and various things like that. But I do believe it lasts for quite a lot longer than a month, and we'll just rely on them to let us know as they're monitoring that as to whether or not we just need to apply some more.
Thank you.
Ray, you've got a question?
You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, Ray.
Yep. Chris, I walk over in that area several times a week with my dogs and my family. Have seen it there. I attended a Mandeville Sports Club meeting of delegates. It was after this date of the 25th of January. No mention of it was made at that particular time, and I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to worry. I'm not going to be concerned because it'll take 40 years, and I certainly won't be around in 40 years, but my younger family certainly will be. Why was the Mandeville Sports Club, who knew it was being tested, why didn't they put signs up sooner and let the general public know? Why is it that I belong to the Mandeville Bowling Club? They still haven't heard about this asbestos. What type of asbestos is it? How long has it been there? And I'm sure if this was in the middle of Rangiora, it'd be gone by now. So why are we waiting?
Thank you for your questions, Ray. I think you've got about 6 questions in there. So I'll start, but when I stop, please continue to ask those other questions because I might have forgotten. I believe you are saying you attended a meeting on the 25th with the Mandeville Sports Club, but there was no mention of it at the time. What I can tell you is that when we found out on the 20th, we didn't know that there was asbestos in it at the time, and neither did the Mandeville Sports Club. They didn't find out until the 11th, once the preliminary contamination assessment had been done, as to whether there was any contamination in the soil at all. In the meantime, we made sure that we put a fence up and put the shade cloth up, taking the worst case scenario. So from the 24th, I believe it was, we were able, between the 20th and 24th, we arranged for a fencing contractor, which are hard to get at the moment, to get there and actually put up that fence and put up that shade cloth. And then we received the information on the 11th of January. So when you were at that meeting, the Mandeville Sports Club wouldn't have been able to actually tell you whether there was any asbestos because they didn't know at the time. What was your next question? Sorry.
What type of asbestos is it?
Okay.
Is it blue, grey or white?
It is, now just hold with me, I've got to flip between a few screens here. It is chrysotile, amosite and crocidolite forms were detected in 2 of the 4 samples. And this was fragments of flat cement sheet and curved cement-bound fibrous materials suspected to be ACM.
Okay, so that's white and grey, which the white is probably not quite so bad. Do you know where it originated from? Was it polite or was it some plaster?
I have absolutely no idea. I'm sorry. We would have to. We only did a preliminary assessment at this stage. Tonkin and Taylor, when they do further work, will be able to determine where it might have come from. But I'm not 100% sure.
And it's quite a windy spot that that this has been dumped. Have the surrounding houses been sampled for asbestos?
No, I don't believe they have been sampled for asbestos. We've only done the actual site itself for asbestos, and all we've been able to find is the actual compressed bound asbestos on site. The 10 samples that we did of the soil didn't show up any particle asbestos in them, which is a good thing. That means that there's a lot less risk of any asbestos having moved from the site. I can't say 100% whether that's the case, but that's what the information is that we've got from Tonkin Taylor at the moment. We are happy to go and seek further advice specifically on whether or not it's something that the council should look into from Tonkin and Taylor, and we're happy to provide that information to the board.
Okay. So a big question that all of Mandeville are very interested in is, when's it going to be gone?
Look, I can't give you a date of when it's going to be gone. All I can say is that we're currently working towards getting Mandeville Sports Club and the council getting Tonkin and Taylor to do the contamination disposal management plan. So until we get that, we don't actually know what's the best method of removing it, where it would go to, and what that process involves. So we have to go through that process before we can actually have a date. What we know at the moment is that in the current form that it's in, it's safe and will be safe for some time with that polymer and with that fencing around the outside. So that was our main focus.
Okay, just one last question. Can we make sure that the Mandeville Sports Club board puts signs up at the all entrances as you're going in there, because at the moment there are none, and also if the bowling club is like the other members, most bowlers don't have access or don't use social media, and so is there some way of getting the board to communicate with those sports clubs that use the Mandeville Sports Centre and they know what they're getting into?
Sure, we'll have a conversation with Mandeville around their communications. That's absolutely not a problem. We also, we're happy to have a conversation again with the asbestos specialist to work out what the risk is. I mean, coming in from the main entrance onto the Mandeville domain, if you're only going to use the cricket grounds at the main entrance, then there's no risk at all, with the distance that this material is away and the fact that we haven't been able to find anything within the soil. So we've got signs which are on the outside of the fence at the moment on the actual stockpile itself, but I'm happy to get some further advice from the specialist specifically around the extent to which we should put signage up. The last thing we want to do is put signs far and wide which don't need to be there because there's actually no risk.
Because there are still people that walk over in that vicinity and not necessarily on the cricket grounds. They walk all over the Mandeville Sports Centre and don't know it's there until they get right up to the deer fence.
Yeah, and we'll get advice from the specialist to let us know whether or not standing on the other side of the deer fence is absolutely safe, which I suspect they'll probably say it is based on the fact that polymer is there, the shade cloth fence is there as well, but I'll certainly ask them that exact question to see whether or not we need to extend the limits of those signs.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks for your questions.
Yeah, Sarah? Yes, Sarah?
Yep, thank you. Just unmuting. Just a couple of questions. Number one, I just missed, what was your answer about if the company that dumped the soil is liable for the mitigations and removal costs?
So I didn't get asked that question and I didn't provide an answer to that question. So thank you for that question. Look, I don't know the answer, unfortunately. It's something which Mandeville Sports Club is going to have to work through. And we'll assist them in that process. But I don't know whether or not they're liable. That's still something which needs to be determined.
Okay, because clearly they would know what company that was that dumped it.
Mandeville Sports Club will, yes.
Right, okay. And also maybe more a comment or no, a question. In the future, would it be advised for the Mandeville Sports Club to receive soil, not necessarily a soil report, but you can get the address that soil is coming from and run it through the Christchurch City Council if it's coming from Christchurch, and they will soon tell you if it's coming from a contaminated site or not. So should that not be something that is necessary for them to do in the future for any dumping of clean fill, just to ensure that this sort of thing doesn't happen again?
Yeah, absolutely. We're working with Mandeville Sports Club at the moment on what are the appropriate processes that you need to go through if you're going to get fill of any size from anywhere, and what the rules and regulations are around that, to make sure that what we've got now is something that just doesn't happen in the future. Correct,
because it's going to be, I would suspect, a substantial amount of money. Number one, just to truck that amount of soil from site, if it is needing to go to Cape Valley, and if it has asbestos needing to be wrapped on trucks as it goes, that's the cost of that is going to be extremely significant, and it's probably not something that the ratepayers should be really having to pay for.
We haven't. Is that? Would you like me to respond? Is that a question?
Would you agree?
Well done. Look, I can't agree or disagree on the basis that I haven't got a contamination disposal management plan from Tonkin and Taylor. So I don't know what the extent of the asbestos is within the stockpile at the moment. So I don't know what method they're going to have to use to actually dispose of that. Worst case scenario, there will be a cost, but at the moment, who foots the bill for that is something that we still need to work through.
Right. Okay. That would be quite something that should, I would imagine, be kept. Will that be kept public, that information?
As much information as we can give the public, we will absolutely give the public, bearing in mind we wouldn't want to jeopardise any possibility to be able to offset any costs that may come to the ratepayer through any other process. So anything which we can provide to the community board and to the wider public and those neighbours who are around Mandeville, we'll absolutely make sure that we work with our communications team and also really closely with Mandeville to make sure that we get the relevant information out when we can. It's really important to Mandeville Sports Club and to us as a council as well.
Right. And I suppose that follows on to my last question. Communication is going to be really important in this process and keeping everyone in our community involved in that. So what is the plan on communication going forward? Where is information going to be accessible from, rather than people having to contact you to get that information? Is there some form of portal or somewhere to put that so that people can access it freely?
So generally our council website and council Facebook page, our Facebook page usually links back to our website. So when we release information, you'll be able to find it on our council website. With the Mandeville Sports Club, will also be having a look at how they're going to disseminate that information as well. We'll be meeting with the Mandeville Sports Club very soon to have a look at where that comms comes from and what the comms is actually saying. We need to be careful with what that comms is. And release the information that's relevant and that we can. So I can't give you an exact place at the moment. However, if the council release anything, you'll be able to find it on the council website.
Right. Okay. So keeping the process open and transparent as possible is going to be very important. And the property that is directly next door to this, some of that soil is basically on their boundary. They would probably be eager to know that they have not got any asbestos, because let's face it, when that board is crumbled and moved, and that's when the dust comes, and it could potentially be in some areas of that fill. They just seemed very, very close to the location of where that is. Have they been contacted at all about this directly?
I'm pretty sure that the neighbours, whether they've been contacted directly, most of them have made contact with me specifically, or some of my other staff. And so, as I mentioned earlier, someone asked the question as to whether or not we would test nearby properties. I will specifically go back and ask Tonkin and Taylor whether they would recommend that that's something that we should do based on the information that they have at the moment from the preliminary testing that they've done. And I'll let the board know what the outcome of that advice is.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, Chris.
Thank you. Cheers for your questions.
Any further questions? Nikki.
Chris, thank you for all of those questions, and well done with all the rest of you with asking some pretty comprehensive questions of this situation. Just in the interest of preventing this from happening again, as part of the process with MSC, can we ensure that advice is given to them when and why resource consents are required? Because I think if a few more questions had been asked along the way, we wouldn't be sitting here. It appears that those involved seem to have done the wrong thing for the right reasons. And yeah, just really in the interest of ensuring it doesn't happen again, can we put something into training for people involved?
Yeah, so absolutely. We're already talking to Mandeville Sports Club on a regular basis, and we'll be letting them know processes and procedures that they need to go through when moving, fill, and similar type things, and the rules and regulations around them. You're absolutely right. There are really good reasons, the community reasons why the soil was moved there, to create a walking and cycling track. So it's an unfortunate situation which we find ourselves in, but yeah, we'll make sure that it doesn't happen again.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I've got a couple more. Thank you.
Wendy. No?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Right now. Chris, just in moving forward, considering the board and where they're situated at the moment, are they getting help from the staff, because they will be going through quite a terrible time at the moment regarding the soil contamination and the worry and such like? So are they getting help from the staff?
They are getting help from staff, waimakariri staff as well, as also board members themselves actually doing quite a lot of work in this space as well. They've been very committed and concerned. And yes, it is very difficult for those members of the Mandeville board, but they're taking it very seriously, and I think they're doing absolutely all of the right things at the moment to make sure they can get this resolved for Mandeville Sports Club. They are a very dedicated group of volunteers who look after Mandeville Sports Club. They put their heart and soul into it, and they do it for the community. This is difficult for them as well, but we'll give them absolutely all the help that we can possibly give them, and I'm absolutely sure that they'll be doing or are doing everything that they can possibly do as well. So yeah.
Okay.
All right, anybody else? Hold your hand up for a while rather than flashing it. Thomas.
Thank you. This is a multi-parted question. There's been lots of talk about asbestos tonight. In terms of their initial testing, have Tonkin and Taylor done any testing into other substances that are in it, like coal tar or heavy metals or chemicals or anything like that? And because of that, is there any risk to the groundwater below? Because we know Mandeville's quite stony and quite porous ground. And if there is a situation where there could be leaching into the groundwater, it could happen quite fast. So is there something, have they done that in their initial testing, and are they going to do it, or are they going to do it going forward?
They have, Thomas. And I'm just flicking between a few pages here. They've done tests for heavy metals, polyaromatic hydrocarbons, and total petroleum hydrocarbons. And they've found those to be below background levels. So that's really positive. It's a good question that you raised, but no, they haven't found those to be at levels that would be of a concern for human health. So that's really good.
And so going forward, when they do this more comprehensive testing, which sounds like they're doing soon, are they going to be just surface samples, or are they going to be actually excavating the piles and getting to the bottom of them and actually doing a full like cross section of a pile here, there, and everywhere sort of thing, or how will that work?
I'm as much of an expert as everyone else probably is here. I rely on Tonkin and Taylor. One would assume though, to make sure that it was a proper analysis, that they would obviously go further than the surface samples that they've done at the moment. But I don't know what the methodology is, Thomas. I'm happy to once they've done it, clearly we'll be happy to share that with the board.
Is that it?
No, we've got Ray. Doug?
Ray?
Thank you. Just one last question while I've got you there, Chris. To do with the Mandible Sports Centre, but nothing to do with asbestos. I have asked the board this on a couple of occasions regarding walkways and cycleways that developers have that have surrounded the Mandible Sports Centre have left that lead into the Mandible Sports Centre. Wonderful idea, but at this stage they're all fenced off. And my question is there any prospect of those being able to be used to access the Mandible Sports Centre by the local residents?
Yeah, I mean, that's the purpose of why they're there, right? But I don't know the operational details of why there's fences. I do know previously we had active forest around the outside of Mandible Domain, but most of that's been removed now, and they're looking at the creation of that walking and cycling track. So I think the plan is to open those in the future. But look, it's a great question, and Tia, I'm sure, will be writing that down, and you know, we'll get back to you and let you know exactly what the answer is. I don't know, sorry, but there will be a reason why. But over I think the intention is eventually they'll be opened up.
Thank you.
Sarah?
All right, this last question. Just wondering, will you be seeking legal advice as to who is culpable for the expense of the removal of this when it comes to it?
Mandeville Sports Club and the council will both be working with our respective lawyers to ask some questions, and you know, we will leave it up to the lawyers to work through that. I don't know what the result of that will be clearly, but yes.
Any more? Right, that's it. All right. Thank you very much, Chris.
Thanks, Doug. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay,
thank you. Moving on. No adjourned business. Reports.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chairperson. Oh, can we start?
Yeah, go ahead, dear.
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chairperson, the first report is the application for grant funding from the Oxford Art Trust. They want to purchase an air purifier that they want to use in their large facility so that they can continue the classes for which they received government funding last year. I'll take the report as read and answer any questions that members may have.
Questions? Sarah?
Is that a necessary thing to have to be able to continue with their lessons?
I don't believe it's necessary. I believe that they want to comply as far as possible with the guidelines that's set by the government, and they feel that this is the easiest way to ensure their members that will be actually attending the classes that they will be safe. you understand what I'm saying.
Anyone else? Yes, Wendy.
Thank you. Should we give them this funding for it? I'm just a little bit concerned about the number of people that they will be having in there for their program. I just hope it's not too many for that. It is a big room, but I'm just hoping that they're not going to have too many people participating at one time, because I don't know whether the air purifier would cope with too large of a group of people.
Through you, Mr. Chairperson, even though they will have the air purifier, they will still have to comply with the government regulations in terms of gatherings. So the way I understood it is that the air purifier was an additional safeguard that they want to implement to ensure the safety of the people who are attending the classes.
All right, Sarah.
Is there any reason in the room that they're in or anything that they can't space themselves, wear masks, do what other people were doing? Or is there a specific reason that the room they're in is not suitable for ventilating other ways or wearing social distancing and that sort of thing?
Through you, Mr. Chairperson, I'm sorry, I won't be able to answer that. I'm not afraid with the room that they will be holding the classes in.
Wendy is. Yes, Wendy.
Yeah, it is a large room, but it doesn't have through ventilation. Like it doesn't have windows everywhere. It's just got two doors. So I can understand why they're wanting to have something else there, because you can't just throw open a window and let the air ventilate right through. It is a big building, a big area, and it has got a high roof, but it's still not. It doesn't have a lot of windows, just a couple of doors.
Right, anybody else? I would suggest that we consider giving them $699 to cover the full cost of this purifier. But that's only my suggestion.
Are you moving that, Mr. Chairperson?
No, I won't move it. We'll wait for a motion from the floor first. But that's my suggestion. Wendy.
Yeah, I'll move that we give them. They have requested $500. What I'd like to just make sure that I go and visit them to make sure that this is the right. All our questions are answered before we hand over the money. So it has the five. I will say the $500, but with a clause in it that the questions that we've asked will meet the standard for you having it, for using the facility.
Sarah?
Yes, and if you could find out if the volume of air in that room is suitable for that particular thing, because if you say it does has high ceilings and it's a large space,
yes, it
is it even going to do anything?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yep.
Right, we've got a motion. We have a seconder. Right. Any further discussion? No. All in favour? Put your hand up if you're in favour, please. Against? It's carried. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
I will go and speak with them tomorrow if they're open, and I will email there with the information required.
Okay, thank you very much, Wendy. Right, move on to the community plan. Tia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. This is the updated community plan, and all the information for 2021 has been included and updated by the various departments. We're just asking the board to approve the updated plan. After the board approval, it will then go to creative admin to make it pretty in terms of layout and photos and everything like that. And then after they've settled on the creative side, we will submit it to the chairperson for final signing off. The board gets the report like this every year, so it's basically straightforward, and this plan is mostly used as promotional material for board activities and made available at all the council service centres. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Nikki.
Just sorry. Well, I suppose actually you did just actually answer that. I was just going to ask. There's a few typos in it. Its content's generally pretty good, but yeah. So someone's going to go over that with a fine-tooth comb then.
Yes.
Excellent.
No, it will be edited, and it will be also the layout and everything will be fixed.
Great. Thanks.
Right, thank you. Okay, we'll leave that in your capable hands, Tia.
We just need somebody to move and second.
I'll move it.
Thank you.
Second that.
That'd be me.
Oh, Nikki. Yeah, okay. All in favour? Against? Carried, thank you. Correspondence, there isn't any. Chairperson's report.
Chairperson, through you, Shirley forwarded a letter from about the Main Street speed limits to all the members, that she asked, she would just like the board's input on the letter.
Yeah.
To community board members today.
Shirley, you want to make some comments?
Unfortunately, Shirley can't make comments, Mr. Mayor, because her speaker is not working, but Thomas has a question.
Yeah, thank you. Could this be forwarded to the council's roading staff, and can we get a bit of a please explain from them, because it's a bit contradictory to what they've been telling us for the last 6 months or so, not even longer than that, like 4 years. So yeah, it'll be good to get a bit of a please explain from them, and then can we also forward it to the council as well, because I'm not sure if we had a reply to our letter that we sent them 3 or 4 months ago, but this would be probably good to go along with that as well. Thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chairperson, I've already forwarded the letter to the council's transport and roading department, and I have spoken to Joanne personally, and she is dealing with the matter. In terms of the letter that the board sent to the council, the mayor's office is in the process of setting up a meeting with the board members and Joanne to discuss various issues that the board raised about the speed limits, whereafter we can report back to the board as a whole.
Okay, and when do we think that's going to be happening? Any ideas?
Unfortunately, I don't know, but I'm sure it's going to be as soon as possible. I just know that everybody seems to be quite busy to get all parties together, but we hopeful it will be done before the next board meeting.
Thank you.
Anyone else? No. Yes, Nikki.
Oh, I'd just like to say, surely that letter did make very interesting reading, and I only wish that we had it sooner. It was quite a revelation to see what Waka Kotahi had to say versus what we thought was the case. So yeah, it does make me wonder if if it had come sooner, if it might have been a bit more helpful to our cause. But yeah, well done in getting that. Thanks.
Thank you, Nikki. Anybody else? Yes, Sarah.
So just so that I understand where we're at with this, so this has already gone through its process with council, and they've already declined that speed limit would occur. Due to this information coming through, is there any way that could potentially cause a re-look at it because it's a new inclusion or something?
Pass.
Through you, Mr. Chairperson, I think Tracy might be in a better position, or the mayor even, will be in the best position to answer that.
Yeah, Gordon, you had your hand up. Yes, please.
Well, if it's permitted, Mr. Chair, I only received the letter today, so I haven't had a chance to consider it fully, but I will. I hold the transport portfolio at council, so I'll get my full attention, and we'll come back to you around that, including options around process. But as was mentioned before, very happy we will have a meeting within the next month before the board meeting. The next board meeting, and I'll be in a position to advise you then with Joanne, our transport manager. So just give us a little bit of time to consider that. It's very helpful to have had that, Shirley, so thank you. And we will come back to you and advise you through tier. Hope it's helpful, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Tracy, do you want to say something? No?
No, I think Mayor Dan's explained where the process is at. And in terms of the ability in terms of process to review that decision, there are options always, of course, but it'll be a question around timing because that decision has been made, I understand, by council. So there are, I guess, processes and procedures around if that was going to get revisited. But that'll, I'm sure, form part of the thinking and discussion once that information is being considered.
Sorry, if I could just further add to that, might be helpful once we've given that feedback that the board consider that as part of its annual plan submission to add that point in there. That would be an opportunity for the council to revisit it on that point as well. But look, we'll come back to you with further advice, but that's my initial reaction.
Thank you. Anyone else? No, thank you. Right. Chairperson's report. I attended the Hookah Rural Drainage Advisory Board group meeting in February. There was considerable opposition to the idea of the subdivision going in at Hookah. And I also attended the North Canterbury Neighbourhood Support meeting last week. And the manager who's been employed 20 hours a week, they're looking at upping her hours to 30 hours a week. She's doing a very good job. And that's it from me. Can somebody move that we accept that report? Ray and seconder, Thomas. All in favour? Carried, thank you. Matters for information, item 11.1 through to 11.11. Somebody move that we accept those reports. Thomas, thank you. Seconder. Sarah, thank you. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Public excluded. Tia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. This is just for noting, so you can just note that similar to the items that you've just noted.
Right.
So you can actually just include it in your the previous motion, if I can say it like that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairperson, it seems that Sarah has a question.
Sarah, yes.
No.
Why are you waving your hand, Sarah? Okay, no question from Sarah. So we'll move on. Members' information exchange. Okay. We'll start with Thomas and go backwards from there.
Right, thank you. I haven't done a lot this month. We had an Ashy Gorge advisory group meeting. It was quite productive, and we farewelled the chairperson, Jan, who's retiring from the group, and we also farewelled the camp managers who are leaving. They left on Monday. Monday was their last day, so the group got them a gift to thank them for 8 or 9 years. I think they've been there, and they've done a tremendous job. To be honest, I've left big shoes to fill for the next camp managers. They've done a great job maintaining the reserve and keeping it presentable for the community, and it's made the job of the Ashy Gorge Advisory Group very easy to work with them and get stuff done around the place. But other than that, I've spent probably the last 2 weeks just fielding complaints about the situation in Mandeville with the soil that we discussed earlier. I think I've had about 20 phone calls today about it. So yeah, it's good to get some answers, and we'll be able to go back to the public now when they phone up and actually tell them what's happening, which is a lot better than the situation I was in before this. So thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. Ray? Ray, your turn.
There we are. Not a lot going on. In February, I attended the Hookah drainage meeting. Things seem to be trucking along there, and as Doug mentioned, it was a big surprise to most members there that there was an application in for 800 sections in Hookah, and I think there was quite a bit of shock amongst the members that there's the possibility of such a development. Grey power yesterday. I didn't go for COVID reasons, and I've got nothing else to report.
Thank you, Ray. Sarah?
Yeah, same. February hasn't been the month of my general meetings, but so I've just got the same with everyone else. A wee bit disappointed with the time it took to get information about the soil at Mandeville. It was not a good feeling when people were asking you questions about it, and other people know more than you do at the time. Also fielding a fair bit of questions and talk about the Hookah development. A lot of negativity around that at the moment, but be interesting to get more information about that as it comes through. And also, as mentioned before, just the concern of the current water table levels around at the moment, notably as high as they have been in peak winter times. So it will be very interesting to know if there's any thought about whether this needs to be something that needs to be addressed in coming up through to winter time. Like we're starting at a baseline level that's extremely high. Where's that going to leave us? So that's about that from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Shirley, we know you've been busy, but you can't tell us about it. Sorry about that. Councillors, which one first?
Sorry, Mr. Chairperson, through you, Shirley has sent us a note on what she's been doing. May I please just read it into the record?
Yes, please.
And now Shirley has sent me more notes. No Oxford Historical Society meeting, no Pearson Park Advisory Group meeting. She's still concerned about the damage to the toilets and community garden in Pearson Park, which has once again been damaged. Also, just to let members know that the Oxford Farmers Market would like to see the EV car park available 24/7, and that we should advise Vanessa of that. They haven't used the car park for over 8 years, and now it is sealed. They could put up 10. They could not put their 10 pinks in the seal, and that is what the note that she has sent us.
Thank you, Shirley. Right, councillors. Who's first? Don't rush us. Okay, thank you, Wendy.
Thank you. I recently attended an Oxford Rural Drainage Advisory Board meeting. They're very, very concerned about the amount of water that's been flowing down Mountsey Stream. Unfortunately, just above there's been a huge amount of work done removing trees, and so there's a lot of very loose soil that is running off and into the stream and starting to block up areas and actually getting into the waterway. So they're very concerned about that because it's causing problems downstream, the Mountsey areas downstream, and causing the last lot of flooding that was created was simply because of the amount of soil and stones and shingle and such like in that stream that created by work that was done up on the hill above. So they've just said to the staff about it that they're really concerned about it, and they would like to see perhaps a little bit more work done on it, because it is also affecting the waterway for rural number 2 as well, because they've got a pipeline in there and they've had to move that because of the damage done. The Oxford Pool, they're really struggling with a lack of staff, and they may have to close it early. I hope that isn't going to be the case, but they're really struggling to man it, and we just haven't got anybody coming in wanting to be, to work there. Unfortunately, we always used to have the students there, but they've been just few and far between. They didn't want to do it, so hopefully we can keep it going through, which would be very good if we can. But I just give you a wee heads up that things are a little bit dire there. The Ashy Gorge Campground, I really would just like to say an appreciation of the previous campground operators. They've had 3 really major events that have happened there while they were in their term. The first one was when their house that they were living in caught fire, and they had to live almost 9 months, I think, something like that. They had to be in a caravan, which was through the middle of winter time, and they were camping in facilities and such like. And really, it was pretty substandard for people to have to manage that through the winter months there. They also then had 2 lots of flooding that flooded their basement of their home, ruined a lot of their stock and their such like, so they had to throw away a lot of that. Then they had another flooding that was the same, that went down through the basement. And then last, of course, of all was when the Ashy Gorge River flooded right across the base, the bottom terrace of that, and it caused major damage. And they've had a lot of work, and they've had a lot of issues to put up with. So I really appreciate what Sally and Wayne have done. And I wish them all the best for what they're going to be doing moving forward. I spoke to him on Sunday, and he was actually quite happy to be on his way. So thank you.
Thank you, Randy.
That's me.
Thank you, Nikki.
Well, thanks for that, Wendy. Yeah, I think I'll just start off with just the community stuff. In addition to obviously the soil issue we've been discussing, there's been a lot of interest and discussion in the community about the Hookah plan change proposal, and I continue to field a lot of queries from the public and the press. It's been that's been fun. It's also been a busy month for water related issues. On the 9th of February, before our last flooding event, I went to visit a property on Mill Road of a resident that had some issues with the drain, and then later on discussed that with green spaces and drainage, and passed on some photos of that because it was a bit of two things. And then on the 11th, I got a call from a Mandeville resident that had an issue due to a contractor who came, Ray Harper put onto me, that his tank ran dry because a contractor inadvertently forgot to turn it back on. So we got in touch with our waters manager, and I do take my hat off to the water team. They quickly got onto that. They removed the restrictor to refill the gentleman's tank and rechecked all the contractors' works to make sure that they hadn't done that to anybody else, and that the problem was more widespread, and they'll reimburse the resident for his pump servicing bill because he had to call somebody in to reprime it 3 times. So it was a happy resolution there, but nonetheless, something that was better to get on top of. With the rain event on the 12th and 13th of February, just like I guess I tend to do, and a lot of you guys do as well, did my best to keep people informed on social media channels, and also drove around the immediate area just to check to see how our drainage was faring in the known trouble spots. I observed the Wilson Drive flooding, which has only really just started to get some notice, but that particular road does flood quite regularly whenever we have rainfall events. And also noted that further to an email I'd been sent about concerns from rain the week prior in the Ohoka domain, the Whites Road entrance by the gatehouse was quite muddy from the week before. And of course, this is unheard of. It's summer and we have mud in the domain, which has never happened before. This time last year, they were complaining that the lawnmowers were kicking up dust because it was that dry, and now we have mud. Welcome to climate change, guys. But during this flooding event, the drains on both sides of the roads were full. It was running across from the farm into the drain on the west side, going across the road into already full drains on the east side, and then going down into this driveway. And I could just see that it wasn't going to be a pretty picture for all of the Ohoka Farmers Market vendors to be driving in through there. So got onto that with Grant, and he organized a meeting with the Ohoka Domain Advisory Group and the Ohoka Farmers Market organizer and myself to go and have a look at it on the Thursday, which was only by the time he could get everybody together, it was just the day before the farmers market. So it's not really like they had a lot of time to call it off, because it's quite a juggernaut of a thing. 100 stalls or so, and their associated vehicles and whatnot, and all the thousands of people that come to it. So I was quite proud of our staff, actually, and also the parties that came to talk about it, in that they all agreed, yes, it's a problem. They very quickly, and I mean quickly, acted to fix it. Within 1 hour after that meeting, our staff went away, got a dump truck of some, is it called AP40? Sorry, that's a Sarah and Thomas question, of gravel to put over it, and averted mud bath disaster for the next day, which was great to see. And they'll be looking into sorting that out. And further to the Wilson Drive issue, I've passed that on and shown photos and whatnot of the situation in Wilson Drive. I went to visit a resident that has the drain in question that causes this problem on their property, and had a good look at that to just understand it, and sat down with our UNR manager overall to have a good look at that and see what we can do about it. On the 15th of February, the culvert bridge over the Ohoka stream on Butcher's Road failed, which was fun. Thankfully, nobody was hurt, and they're looking at getting that sorted out as soon as possible. It's just the amount of water that has come through the Ohoka stream and downstream of all these very wet areas in the middle of winter, or sorry, it is expected, but summer is just unheard of. I mean, Sarah, you're right to actually ask. With our high water table now, I mean, I have lived here for 23 years and I have never seen this in summer. It's incredible. I can guarantee you that the undercurrent will definitely be flowing, and it will be an interesting year. But groundwater is groundwater, and there's not a lot we can do about it. We can only just try to get the drainage going as well as we can. And on the 22nd of, just kind of jumping around a little bit, we observed the anniversary of the Canterbury earthquake at 1251, which I'm sure you all agree is certainly an important milestone to mark, and a sad one for various reasons for us all. Going back to meetings, I suppose probably a few of you sat in on that, had an all-board Zoom about our about WDC's Three Waters position and our community's involvement in, and our involvement in communities for local democracy. So basically, as you guys would be aware, 60 out of 67 councils oppose the government's current proposal, and I think we're sitting at about 29 councils so far that have joined communities for local democracy. I don't know if that's the 29, Dan. And on the 10th of Feb, there was the Hookah Rural Drainage Advisory Group meeting, which of course had Ray and Doug as well. Interesting that there was I noted that there was a very strong opinion that the undercurrent should be channeled to the Waimakariri River rather than the old Air riverbed amongst the members. But that's a very long trench to dig, so it'll be interesting to see where they get with that. Ashworth's Road in the maintenance update was seen as the worst in the Ohoka drainage area in the December event. And they also discussed rake attachment versus bucket versus glyphosate methods as a proposed trial, because raking seems to be increasing weed growth, which is not ideal. Audit and Risk Committee on the 15th, the Capital Works program is quite behind schedule, largely due to supply chain issues and resourcing in a tight labor market. And I'm sure that that will be no surprise to any of you guys, but yeah, it's tough out there. On the 16th of Feb was the Prevention of Alcohol and Drug Harm Steering Group, which I and one of the other members turned up and found that sadly our lovely Natalie, who has chaired this group, has accepted a role closer to home in the Hurinui District Council. But luckily we have Martin from our community team who will take over in the interim, but that's something that I'm keen to see going forward. With DPNR, the District Planning and Regulation, the update that the planning unit gave us, there's a 59% increase between 2020 and 2021. We managed to process 96.5% of the applications within the statutory timeframes, which is not as good as usual, but better than our other Canterbury councils anecdotally. And the RC compliance and monitoring is trending upward. Sounds exciting, right? I know. We also had a briefing on tiny homes as we'd requested, because everybody kind of wonders, is it a building? Is it a vehicle? There's a really nice little guide that they gave to us that answered a few questions. On the 22nd as well, we had the Waimakariri, in addition to several meetings on the 22nd. The Waimakariri Youth Council had a Zoom with their, including their 7 new members, which is exciting. I'm looking forward to getting to know those guys and seeing what they can achieve for our district youth. And on the 28th, there was a North Canterbury Youth Services Networking meeting, which is a first of its kind, which had attendees from our council, Christchurch, Hurinui, Kaikoura, also Youth Town, Canterbury Youth Collective. I think that's most of them. And Emily, our youth development manager, is looking to complete a youth development directory and a map to help connect young people to services and interests. So that's something that we don't have right now, all in one place where people can go to. So that'll be quite good to get underway. But yes, and of course, yesterday was our council meeting, but not really a whole lot in there specific to our ward. So Are there any questions, guys? Then that's it from me. Thanks.
Thank you for that. And you got something else to say, Nikki? No? Right. Do we have to receive those reports here?
No, Mr. Chairperson, we can just move on to consultation projects.
Okay, right. Consultation projects, e-scooters, and draft annual plan.
That's just for noting, sir.
Nothing to report on that.
No.
Right. And board funding update. Discretionary grant stands at 4,887 and the landscaping budget at 12,710.
Through you, Mr. Chairperson, may I just remind the members to please promote the board discretionary grant in the communities. We have that funding available and we're already in March. We've only got 3 months left of this financial year. And I'm sure that there's organizations out there that actually need our support. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Chair. And no media items, no questions under standing orders, no urgent business under standing orders. The next meeting will be held at the Mandeville Sports Centre if we have a physical meeting on Monday, the 6th of April 2022 at 7 p.m. I will close the meeting.
Excuse me, did you say Monday?
I said Monday because that's what it's got written here.
Can I just confirm that, because I doubt that it is a Monday, Mr. Chairperson. I'll come back to members on that.
The 6th is a Wednesday.
Thank you.
I wondered when I read it out, but it's all read. Right. Anything we need to workshop? Thomas, you had something at the beginning. You want to discuss that more?
Sorry.
Yeah,
Mr.
it would just be good. Sorry.
Can I just hang on a moment that I just switch off the audio streaming, please?